Well, I always think that's a bit of a sudden end. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. It's MJ here on First Friday Live at 5 o'clock. And for a change in the last 3 months, we've actually got the right day, the right time, and the right part of the month. So we have today Andy Dalby-Welsh. You can see his name written on the screen for those of you that are reading. And today is all about resilience. I mean, when you hear the story, you'll understand why. And sport, something that I was pretty much reintroduced to with hand cycling just a few years ago. But up to then, not a great deal apart from swimming, and of seeing possibility even without sight. So our guest, as I've said, is Andy Dalby-Welsh. He's a blind cricketer, an inclusion champion, and he's been all over doing that, all over the world, and is a powerful voice in the disability sport community. He's shown me actually, and so have other people who've been affected by blindness, that it doesn't mean the end of ambition. It doesn't mean the end of life. In fact, cricket, not something I enjoyed as a child because I had to watch my brother play cricket all the time, and we all know what that happens if you watch your brother all the time. But cricket actually can be the start of something fairly remarkable for people, and it's blind cricket is a massively fascinating adaptation of that game if you know it. The one that we know and love is a little bit different because players rely on sound, logical when you realise, and on instinct and teamwork and, well, I think immense concentration to know where something's going without seeing it. Um, and the ball contains bearings so it can be heard but not seen. It needs teamwork, and I think that Andy's taken that challenge head on. He's used cricket, I know from my understanding of him, to build community and confidence and a platform for advocacy, for speaking up for people of lived experience, those people of determination. So I am more than grateful for Andy coming along today and sharing with us this time. It's precious time, Andy, and it's precious to us. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Pleasure, MJ. Thank you very much. A lovely welcome, and yeah, I'm really chuffed to be here. So thanks for the opportunity.
No, do you know what? You go before great people. And for those of you that are looking back on the previous podcast, we've had Pete Cohen, if you don't know him, is my coach. We've had Steve Brown, another great sports person. And this sporting thing just seems to be following me around. So I'm going to blame you for that, Andy, and all the people that have gone before you, including my brother, Gary Lace, who's a great cricketer himself, and so's my nephew, Thomas. So cricket's in our blood. It's in my history, but it's not all about, you're not. I don't believe if I cut you into it, just says cricket. I think it says other things. So tell everybody about Andy Dalby-Welsh, not just about your cricket. Tell me a
No,
bit.
sure. I mean, cricket has been a big part of my life, MJ,
Cool.
and I think by extension, sport as well. And I'd say family is huge equally, and they're all interconnected because growing up, my dad got me involved in sport. It was a big deal in my family. He took me to watch Brighton Hove Albion, which were also a big part of my life still. And I was introduced to every sort of sport that I could possibly wish to play as a young person, and it was sport that really helped me to thrive at school. Well, I'm
Yeah,
not sure I thrived. I thrived at sport. I didn't thrive at school or at education necessarily, but it gave me a place at school, I would say, to build friendships, to develop respect for my peers, and it played such an important part. And it gave me a lot of my joy as well. So it's it is important. It does run through me, whether it's cricket, whether it's sport. But it's not just that. It's what sport can bring people. I think that is so amazing and fantastic.
so do I. And I think the beginning of this, when I alluded to the teamwork, we were talking just before we came on air that much as we know that you are cricket master of the blind cricket world in the world, you are god of cricket is what I'm going to call you. But but now, I mean, now it seems wildly different to me. although it is all about balls and sticks and hoops, isn't it? That you now sit, well, you're working with croquet, aren't you, as a sport? Is that something you've done before?
I'd played croquet before growing up, as I say, sort of. I'd pretty much been exposed to every sport, and on joining the role, I remembered that actually we played croquet at my grandparents' house when I was about 6 or 7, and I shared a photo with my colleague Alison at Croquet England to sort of show actually I'm not completely out of the sport of croquet. And another one in my early 20s, soon after I developed my eye condition, I was at my uncle's. He'd got a nice lawn out the front of his house, and had got a lawn croquet set. We played there. And not long before I got the job, I played at my nephew's wedding where that was placed. So I think I've played quite a lot of croquet, really, but a bit different to cricket. But like you say, there's some similarities in it, and again, it offers a huge amount to people who are incredibly passionate. You can play it at an elite level and travel the world, or you can play it with your mates, with your peers, and it does amazing things to build social connectivity. So, whatever the sport is, there's often commonality that can do so much more for you. And I'm passionate that any sport can do that, and croquet is no different.
Well, we should call them entry sports, right? A bit, a bit like the gateway to further illicit substances. Because once you start moving, it's true though, isn't it? It's the same thing. It's a dopamine rush, whether it's about teamwork or it's about a collective spirit, or it's about shouting for a team, or whether you're playing it, and whether you lose. It's also about losing, because when you lose, you can be in commiseration with each other. It's human connection and belonging. And so, of course, I believe that whatever movement we can do, I run to, as you know, because I go on about it all the time. I'm part of Pete Cohen's coaching program, and Dr. Bob Rakowski came up with or alludes to the Magnificent Seven, one of which, of course, is move right. And never have I seen such a difference in my life as to when I was from sedentary in a hospital bed to doing donuts in my wheelchair in the bathroom in order to get some movement going. That was the most I could do at the time. But, it gives you those hope molecules. So once you get that in community, we're cooking on gas, as they say. So I think it does bring about inclusion, and you're a fantastic example of that. And you've been involved in not only playing every sport. You just come back from skiing, and I'm so sorry that you had a little bump there. I'm sure it's bigger than a little bump, but I don't want to make people worry that it's a terrible happening. But whether you're participating in skiing or cricket or croquet or all the other millions of sports, or whether you're governing, or whether you are providing advocacy within the sport community. And I've talked previously about gaps in all sorts of areas: education, health and social care, NHS delivery. But there's also gaps in sport, isn't there? Where do you think sport needs to do more work as far as closing that gap between, of inclusion? Where do you think it might be?
I think, MJ, that for me, there's a significant chunk of this that is around employability and creating opportunities for disabled people with employment. I mean, that is across society, but from my own sort of lived experience and working in the sporting sector, potentially quite often the charity side of things, but connecting with the wider sporting sector, I don't see many, excuse the pun, but I don't see many other disabled people in the workforce. And when I do, quite often they're in roles promoting and celebrating and coaching other disabled performers. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely fantastic. The first things I did were to develop programs for other disabled people. But I had an aspiration to be able to move beyond that and challenge myself to lead organizations that were for everybody. and then to look at how do we include disabled people through that. And I don't believe we do a good enough job in sport to enable disabled people to first access employment, and then secondly, how do we support them to feel aspirational enough to go on and achieve leadership positions. And I think if we had more people in those positions and in those organizations, that we may naturally look at how we deliver our activities in a different way and find that actually sport becomes far more inclusive to play and access, because we've got more voices around the table, views around the table, and we can make the changes that need to happen to break down the barriers that just make it a more accessible environment wherever it is you're accessing it.
I think I liken it to, if I want to get my lights fixed, I ask an electrician. And I think that if we're going to serve the whole of society, if our boards, if our employment groups, if our teams, if our organizations don't reflect society, then we're going to miss out on some people we're not going to serve. It comes down to a very basic business premise for me, that if you run a publicly facing organization that wants people, you better have all the people around your table to provide for all those people, because it's through our lived experience that we understand the needs of our people. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you need, every every type of human in the entire world, but you need a good cross section, and we've just not got it. And I've always said, and again, forgive your pun to mine, but you can't be what you can't see. Unless you experience people in leadership teams, how can you aspire to be them? Yeah. So I've always had to aspire to be somebody able-bodied. But it's been very difficult to see somebody in a wheelchair really cracking it. And as you say, very often we are kept within our teams, if you like. Let the special people support the special people. And of course, there's nothing more great for me and honourable than serving the people that I support. But equally, I think that we need that education across the board. So I couldn't agree more with you. In your current role, which it seems a bit of a daft question, because if there is one, you can get on with it on Monday, can't you? But the question is, what have you seen as a almost repeated barrier that organisations across all your roles, and I've probably got my own comments about this once I've listened to yours, they'll form about what's the one barrier you've seen that really should have been solved by now?
I think it's a psychological barrier, I think, in the sense of people not necessarily understanding that despite having a disability, and you may not only want to do something, but you may be able to do something, and therefore that opportunity should be provided. And so I suppose if I was to sort of flip it, where I've experienced this most fantastically was that the first organisation I worked with Andy Dalby-Welsh, who was the England blind cricket coach I worked with, and originally with England blind team, but then also joined him at the charity that he ran. He just had the attitude to make things effortlessly accessible by having the conversations that just made it happen naturally. There was no forced conversation. It built trust really early, and there was both sort of credibility, trust, and opportunity by working with him. And I think the psychology and probably lack of confidence for people sometimes to be able to feel confident to ask the questions, to understand that anyone can sort of almost achieve, you just need to open the door in a respectful sort of way to enable them to do it, is what we just need to continue pushing and changing. Really, I think it's just the attitude of it. It's still a surprise that people might want to do this or can do it, and I think we've still got to stop that from being a surprise and just say, well, actually, we should all be able to do what we want to do. We've got to move the barriers out the way.
Yeah, I think sometimes putting things in boxes such as the Disability Equality Duty and the Disability Discrimination Act, we have to have them right. We wouldn't be where we are now without them. However, when we put things in boxes, people then rarely want to look outside of them. So actually they go, well, there's a lift, so shut up.
Yeah.
And there's a door, so what are you on about? But
Yeah.
actually, to feel included, culturally, we have to accept that we all are either disabled, yet to be disabled, or we know somebody that is, which means that those that don't actually have anything to do with disability are few and far between. It's just that I feel that we don't like to talk about what we don't want to be.
No.
But maybe if we accepted disability and death as likely inevitable, that we don't celebrate death even, and that's to me
Yeah.
also logical, because I love the fact that the people around me are able to be released from this very physicality when they can, because bodies are a bit annoying when they can't see or move or do all sorts of things. They can be quite limiting. But in order to resolve that, I have been, and I truly can say this hand on heart, I have been banging on about the phrase co-production for about 15 years. And at the moment, as you very, very effortlessly put, we are leaving people to be consulting around their disability and in their teams, or what do all the blind people want? What do all the deaf people want? Rather than we're still asking of the group what they want, as opposed to genuinely sharing, and I dare to say this word, power with us. I say them, but it's us, right? That we are to share equal power with people who are able to read and do not deem themselves yet disabled. How do we get away from that, what I refer to as othering? This is really timely. I hope in sport, I know in health and social care, it absolutely is in education, it is in fostering. It really is, what I'd say that the topic that's been sitting around in my cupboard for 15 years, but people have just started to get out properly. How can we move from consulting to co-production?
I think it's through building trusting, open relationships that bring into the conversation. I mean, I mentioned it again, sort of that first experience I had in employment. I'm really fortunate. It was sort of my first one, but I wasn't othered. I was completely empowered to achieve whatever I wanted to achieve, and trusted to be asked about what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, what I wanted to do. No, not what I wanted to do as a disabled person, but what I wanted to do in terms of my career and developing the organization. And I was part of it and empowered to create my own future and my own sort of leadership journey within it. And then it happened. And so the trust came from the early conversations, but then that happening in action. And I think that being done with, I mean, we talk a lot in leadership about authenticity, but that being done with sincerity, authenticity, whatever you want to call it, but it then leading to that falling into practice. If, I hope, I was part of that, because if I hadn't delivered and couldn't offer or do what I said I wanted to do, then my journey wouldn't be what it was. But I was brought into the conversation, I was given the opportunity, and it's led me on the path that I've gone on to be here sort of talking to you. And that came and continues to be things able to be achieved by having those trusting, honest and open conversations that you are very much part of, not being had happen to you.
the doing with and not doing two is also incredibly prevalent in social work. And you'll know, for those that don't that are watching, I'm a trainee social worker in Wales. I should have already graduated. I'm looking forward to November and hoping that will be the graduation. But for me, access and inclusion has been a lifelong journey, and I believe that that when we open up the door to genuine, authentic, curious conversations, curiosity without judgment, then we start to hear people's lived experience, and then we can greater understand it. I can't hope to know how it is to walk in your shoes, and you certainly don't know how to walk in mine because I don't walk in them. But you'd have to sit down. My shoes last forever. They look as good as the day I bought them. So more full the bipeds wandering about wasting their shoes. Mine could last me 2 decades. But apart from me not using shoes, I think that co-production comes from those, like you say, early conversations that are genuinely heartfelt and curious, i.e. we want to actually get to know each other. And I think the vulnerability, Brené Brown, great psychologist lady, Brené Brown, who's written a number of books, Dare to Lead being one of them. She says we're actually most frightened of who we are, not who we aren't, and being vulnerable in leadership actually allows other people to be vulnerable too. When we genuinely inquire after, which was my psychotherapist tutor's phraseology, if you genuinely inquire after something, then you genuinely get an answer, and then you can put to task the job of how we solve the challenges that are in front of us together. So I think it is how we move, and it comes from the heart, right? We can put as many practical things in about co-production. We can throw money at it. We can put people together. But if they're not there genuinely to make a difference together, then that power isn't shared. And when power isn't shared, it becomes mismatched. But on to more and to far more interesting things, because of course the only things I know about you are that you play cricket, that you go skiing, that you've definitely got a family. But I mean, what happens in everybody wants to know this. What happens in an Andy day? What's your typical day? And I'd really like to know, and here's what I'm going to throw at you. Like, what are your, if you have them, sounds a bit weird, the word, but what are your rituals? What are your regulars? What are the things that sustain you?
It depends where I am. But if I'm at home, if I'm doing well at home, I get up very early, tends to be 5 o'clock, something like that. I'll do a bit of work and I'll go to the gym. And the gym bits, if I'm doing well. And having said all that I've said about sport, I should be doing that more often than I am at the moment. But I'll do a bit of work. I'll then make a bit of breakfast for me, for my wife, and get the kids sort of begin to get the kids lunch ready as they sort of rally for school, which I absolutely love. They're 13 and 11 and fast growing up. And so all I can do to be around them, help them, involve my life in their life as much as I can before they don't want me to anymore. I'm absolutely maxing out on. And then working through the day. Sometimes I'll be traveling with work. I'm very fortunate. Yesterday was at the Shard for NGB, so National Governing Body CEO Forum. So sometimes I'll be up to London and back. Sometimes out to Cheltenham, where we're based at Croquet England. And that's sort of a bit of gym, bit of home life, bit of whatever it might be. And if I can cook with the kids, I'll do that. I love cooking. And so if I can of an evening, if I'm around, I'll work with the kids and do a bit of cooking, which I just thoroughly love doing.
Does it relax you?
Yeah, I think it does. They're probably not always so keen to help because I normally have the football on in the background, so that tends to scare people away from cooking with me. But it does. I'm very happy. Cooking up for people, whatever it might be, and if it can be a curry, then all the better.
Too right. I'm coming for curry. Make sure it's gluten-free. I love meat. Anything dead, that's great. I'm just clarifying that. I prefer my curry dead. But I absolutely don't want gluten, and then you can feed me all the curry in the world. So that's you and me for a curry at yours at some point. The only question is, you can actually get in your house. So he says, "Yeah, I've put stairs outside now.
That's it. That's it.
Installed. We've just had some new stairs installed."
How did you know? How did you know?
Yeah, I knew. That's how I heard the order. I've got your phone line. So my legacy is not going to be this. I'm not going to have a legacy of I tapped the phone of Andy Dalby-Welsh because I didn't, just to find out whether you were getting
That's it.
I do want to leave a legacy. I'm just wondering for you, and I am getting to that age because I'm old, and nobody understands when I say that, but I really am. So I'm looking at legacy now. I'm at that stage in my life. My kids are 11 and 13. I was just thinking to myself then, oh, that's amazing that he's still, and you always will, I'm sure, be wanting to be around them. But I'm at that stage in life when I'm like, this is wonderful that I've got these wonderful humans that are going off doing what they want. Actually, now for the first time, I'm not making lunch and I'm not doing 84 people's washing. But so it does move you on to legacy for me, when that that empty nest syndrome, that bit where you've done your bit and they're off doing their own thing, so you feel like you've pretty much got the bulk of the job complete. You can start looking at other interests, can't you? What took me straight away then was, right, well, what am I going to leave? I mean, we know that in 3 generations nobody's going to remember us anyway, but in that short space of time, our kids, our grandkids, your others, your mothers, your brothers, what legacy do you want to leave in this space or any other space? What legacy in the inclusion space or other space do you want to leave?
Yeah, but I'd love MJ to continue on, as I've highlighted, around employment and sport. I'd love to keep sort of driving that and pushing, actually, how do we create more opportunities and prove the point that actually organizations, whatever they are, will be better for having more disabled voices within them. But then the practicalities of the games that we play. So, I've been fortunate to use sport, adapting sport here around the globe to enable people to play it who may have thought they wouldn't be able to access those opportunities, or to coach others to do it who they didn't think they'd be able to work with, to give them those opportunities. And I guess, the bit that really attracted me around croquet is I think it's a brilliant sport. It should be one of the most accessible sports out there. It's amazingly good. It's got amazing intergenerational potential, and let's work with sports to open up those opportunities that enable everybody to play, everyone to enjoy it, and everyone to succeed at the level that they want to. And that can be on the court, on the lawn, on the pitch, or it should be anywhere up to the boardroom. And if I can influence on the pitch and in the organisations, I'd love that to be my legacy.
I love that top down and bottom up perspective. You're on the boards. That's where we need the leadership and representation. And then you're thinking about those individuals who are just going to pick up a lawn set and start, messing about. And messing about is the greatest form of edifying recreation. And, we know that the most edifying recreation is done together, because human connection is the thing. And I've been thinking about croquet because you brought it up, because you went to work there. So that was the first time I thought about croquet, I'll be honest with you. And the reason for that is because I was never exposed to it. To a comprehensive school, there wasn't any grass. Well, I'm joking, you know what I mean. We certainly didn't have croquet. And it wasn't something that my parents did. I'm giggling because, it just wasn't. We didn't have it in our street. And so I think that it feels like a massive untapped potential where you surely can, if you really want to, can't you put this is probably going to sound like an idiot question. There can be no silly questions though.
That's right.
I'm not a croquet human yet. But, remember, I didn't even know there were hand cycles till 5 years ago. Honestly, I had got to the ripe old age of half a century I've just admitted my age now. This month. All the
Happy
fives.
birthday.
Thank you. If you add 5 and 5 together, it makes 10. Which you add them together, it makes 1. And 2026 is also the year of 1. So it's my birthday in the year of 1.
Yeah.
My year of 1. Which must mean it's about me, which is why I'm going to talk about croquet now. So yeah, I've thought about it, and I've thought, yeah, I've never been exposed, a bit like polo or any other of those sports that you don't think about, or like
Yeah.
Latin if you don't go to private school. But you can surely just get a hoop, right? Stick it in some sand, get some balls, and then bash them through the hoop with a mallet. I mean, surely there's all sorts of ways of playing croquet. It doesn't have to be, croquet England's, elite sport rules,
Mm.
does it? We can
No.
adapt it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And absolutely. And I think that's it. I think, as with many sports, if you want to play at the elite end, take part in world championships, there's a certain way that you play. But if you want to enter a sport, start at the grassroots level, get young people playing. There are kid sets that you can play in your hallway at home if you've got a hallway at home that you can pick up. There's from that side of things all the way up to the very elite end of it. And sport's supposed to be fun. And if your entry point is enjoyable, however you sort of play it, the chance of you then continuing and developing through that sport is much greater. If your first experience is a really tricky, difficult, challenging one and not a great deal of engagement, you're not going to stick and play, are you? And that's sports learned a lot over recent years, I think, in terms of making things better for young people. Cricket's done it with All Stars programs and Dynamo's programs that's focused around fun. And I think that's it. Get them in, get them having fun, and people will stay. And then they want to learn more, they want to improve, and that's when they will start taking things more seriously, and if they want to, but you don't have to.
And you know what? I think that mirrors in all sorts of walks of life. When I joined the British Association of Social Workers, and they said, we want membership. That's what we want. We want to represent social workers. And I said, but there's hardly any students. And they made student entry free.
Yeah.
As a result, we are having, in the 70s, 80s, whatever numbers every month coming. And once they're with us and they are engaged in the CPD, in the professional development, in the fun times, in the conferences, in the opportunities, in the funding opportunities, then they're part of a community. And once you're part of a community, then you grow from each other. And I think you can replicate that kind of, look, let's not take the fun out of life.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that we're looking at what's edifying about this,
Yeah.
And not just we've got to have 15 world Olympians. Brilliant, but we make those, I believe, through heart, and I believe we make them through connection and community, and through wanting to represent the country, and that's born of a community spirit. So whether we're talking about, and sport is vital. As I say, I didn't know what a hand cycle was. Now I have my own.
No. Yeah,
I've never done a marathon, and now I have.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling to say that, and to achieve through movement those kinds of battling your own will, as you say. You'd like to go to the gym a little bit more, maybe not just after the skiing incident, maybe just do some arm weights or something. Sit at home, just for a minute. Don't tell Pete I told you to do that. I think seeing the joy for me, how my body changed, how strong I was, how transport was much easier, how my inflammation levels reduced, how my my outlook was brighter.
Yeah.
Sport, it's great. It's also a bit of a con, isn't it, for your body? Because you're like, well, I'm enjoying this, and you're also exercising. Shush. Tell your brain, but you're actually doing that movement stuff that will keep you living longer and have a longer life. But when we can dress it up in fun, then movement doesn't seem quite so challenging. And for those in pain, those that have chronic health conditions, actually the reason that I work so long, and everybody knows it, so I'm not going to embarrass anyone by suggesting I don't, or myself, it's a challenge for me. But I do it because I've realised, because actually it distracts me from my own discomfort. often focus will detract us from the negativities in life, like having a positive attitude.
Yeah.
Paul McKenna put 5 opportunities in front of one person in a village who cited herself to be the luckiest woman in the world, and she used to win everything, and she used to touch the dog in the middle of the village and call it the lucky dog.
Right,
And then he had a man in a fishmonger's, I think he was, and he said he was the unluckiest man that had ever walked the face of the earth. And he saw none of the opportunities, and she saw every single one of them, including financial. So sport gives us that hope outlook. It gives us that camaraderie, and I think that's mirrored in teams, whether it be in a trade union or a members organisation or a club or a family. And I also think that sport mirrors really good, really positive values, and that can be mirrored back at home. It sounds like you had a great childhood, by the way. I'm going to borrow.
Well, no, you're right, and it's people, isn't it? If you can surround yourself with the right people in life, and if you're fortunate enough to come across the right people, the right people in life, I think for me, positivity. I think who isn't drawn to positive people, but not everybody is positive. But I think it's huge. I'm sort of, when my eyes deteriorate, when people have asked in the past, how did you cope and that sort of stuff, I was so fortunate. My family were amazing, my friends were amazing, and I was very fortunate in that I had a positive attitude at that moment that sort of said this wasn't gonna define me or defeat me, and all sort of almost was a platform for what I sort of went on to do. And then, my wife's incredibly positive, supportive, the kids are positive. And as I mentioned, Andy, blind cricket, turned up, couldn't have been more positive, and we worked together for years. And the power of the positive for me is just huge. It's absolutely huge. And I am absolutely drawn to people who have got that positivity and just want to make stuff happen.
It's just why we like each other. We just have to admit it now, live on air. There's a reason we like each other, because we're not miserable. Oh, she's not miserable. I'll spend a bit of time with
her. Yeah. Maybe that is the flip side, that I'm not so good at the patience of people who aren't quite so positive, maybe, which might be a different
maybe.
Story,
but do you know what? I'm going to hold that in my heart, that you like me because I'm positive. Otherwise, you'd never have spent some time with me. So, in spite of my own negative behaviours, sometimes I will, on the whole, now assess myself as mainly positive. And I was just thinking back when you said about your relationship, your long-term, long-standing friendship and collegial relationship with the other namesake of yours. That I've had a client, a lady, who told me the other day it was 25 years I've been working with her. Right. I mean, I say on and off, but it's not been more on than off.
Yeah.
And I went into one of her assessments, and a colleague of mine was shadowing and said to me, I couldn't have given that justice, because you knew so many details about the challenges that she has, that you were able to give the case manager a real sense of who she is, and I think that does it helps me realize that if I've got if we've got individuals that we've been working together, like you and him, for a lot of years, over a lot of time, it is those built relationships that are then mirrored. So she's doing really well, incredibly well, and that possibly wasn't the way she felt when she first arrived in Inclusion, which is the charity that's been going for quite a lot of years, and so it crosses all borders, doesn't it? It crosses work, education, training, the community, and actually the running thread, the silver thread that goes through right the way through that is community and authenticity and genuine intent. And that positivity, because you think about wartime and you think about when communities are under a massive amount of stress, and maybe a disaster happening, we know what's happened just recently, that people do then draw from a sense of community. And I think it shouldn't need a disaster for us to start leaning into that before we need it. You know, we don't need a world war to happen before we start pulling together.
No.
But the power in that collective is massive
Mm.
for me, and I'm going to give you some power now. It's enormous power you're going to hold. I actually have two of them, so I'm going to lend it you for 5 minutes, and if you nick it, it's fine because I've got a second one. So if you run out the room with it, I'm all right. So you now have a magic wand. You've got to know that it's already in your hand. And you've not got long because you can't be leaving those around for ages. Otherwise, things will happen and things will get included. But if you had 5 minutes, I mean, it's not really about time, to change, and I'm interested in this because I'm a bit of a policy geek.
Yeah.
A guy called Stephen Ball, that's right, said that policy is acted. Policy is live. It's a live participant, and we enact policy by living it. We are lived actors. We are living our policy out because policy is just dry words on a page unless the people that the policy was made for are enacting them, participating in them, and then challenging them where they feel that policy doesn't fit the scenario correctly. But what do you think if you had my magic wand, which you have because I'm kind, and you could change one policy that would have the biggest impact on disabled people's lives? It's a massive question. I'm kind of sorry for giving it you because it's massive. Which one do you choose, right? But what would it be? What policy do you think if you could have my magic wand, which you've got for 5 minutes? I'll give you 5 minutes. You don't have to talk for 5 minutes if you don't want.
Okay, so that's good guidance because I normally will. I would bring in a policy that would out of college, out of university, where at the point of leaving education, and I would specifically put a focus on this around blind and visually impaired people, but broaden it out for disability, no problem. But the employability rates of blind and visually impaired people is absolutely woeful currently. So I would give every disabled person an employment place on leaving education, not back to the point of sort of other smothered and that side of things, but actually in agreement in organizations that they would want to work in, a funded employment place with the right support package around it. And that isn't purely just finance or, it's equipment. It's also mentoring. It's the support that enables that person to thrive in the environment that they've been placed in for a period of time. So it's not just a gift. You've then got to deliver, and you've got a period of time, a fair period of time to deliver. And if you do that job, you've proved your case and that job becomes yours and you're in the employment market. And if you don't deliver, then you're out, because it shouldn't be a gift, but your foot in the door to get started with the right support, because for me, it will give that person the opportunity, but also at mass scale, it will change attitudes of society, and it will change the effectiveness of organizations, whatever that organization might be, whether it's a school, whether it's a company, whether it's corporate, whether it's sport, whether it's third sector. But it would improve our organizations. It would get people feeling incredibly positive about themselves and making a difference in society. And my belief is that the vast majority of us want to do that, and actually changing attitudes and perceptions through that would be my change to policy.
I love that. I've just been looking, and I knew it was similar. So 1 in 4 people who are blind work, 27%, 29%, 27% of neurodivergent people. So that's dyslexic, dyspraxic, autistic, very similar. And the rates aren't that different. Go on, sorry.
No. And if you're severely sight impaired, it's about 5%.
Exactly.
Drops to that.
And the same with learning disability. The marginalisation of those with a learning disability is outstanding. So, the truth is about all of what you've just said, for me, what comes up for me is that we can't be what we can't see. Difficult phraseology, but we can't even become what we can't see, without there is a vehicle by which we can become. I was speaking to another totally blind individual the other day about employment, and he said, the greatest challenge for me was realizing that nobody expected me to do anything. Nobody
Yeah.
imagined I'd get a job. Nobody believed I'd live independently. I don't know
Mm.
what they thought was going to happen at the end of my parents' life, but somehow I was just going to disappear. Nobody had any aims for me, and
Mm.
therefore it's difficult for me to have aims for myself. And you can see that. And if there aren't opportunities, I've always believed in the MVQs not really being what people said, which was not very qualified. That was
Yeah.
what they said they stood for. The truth is about apprenticeships and about my degree differences. So I got a degree at the Open University, then I went to a Russell Group, then I went to a brick built, and now I'm in a what used to be an art college in a library that started in a room in a library, Cardiff, met in the metropolitan version. So what used to be a further education college, and the reality is that unless we've got a platform by which we can become and get access, I was part of widening participation,
You are.
widening
Yeah.
participation to university. And people say, oh, there's loads of degrees and, they're a waste of money. But it's not just about the qualification. Back to the team playing, it's about the experience, it's about the independence, it's about the friendships, it's about the opportunities that you haven't had. It's about, more sports. It's about having chance to learn to speak in public, have all those skills that go with workfulness. But apprenticeships do all that from the bottom, just like the Open
Yeah.
University. It does it all from the bottom up. It doesn't expect anyone to arrive somewhere that there might not be. You can arrive on an apprenticeship where you are, and then you build on those skills, both practically and then in some reflection, whether it's words or a video. I've always been a practitioner for, all the years I've taught, where if somebody can bring me the evidence of their learning through whatever, even plumbing,
Yeah.
to dance, I don't care what they bring it in, as long
Yeah.
as I can evidence that the learning's happened. I don't care how they express it. And I
Mm.
think we've got to move away from this back to the Russell Group versus further education versus whatever. I think we have to move back to the idea that what Frere said about education is it should free us to think.
Yeah.
It's not there to teach us the times tables. Education, the purpose of it is to teach us to think, and
Mm.
for us to believe that we can think our way, into a career, a pathway, a journey, a hope, a dream, a want, a wish, is the human becoming. And we only get that through the very opportunities that you're describing. And
Mm.
you're right about organizations, because people say that we are heart driven in our organization, that the people within the organization that I am honored
Yeah.
to direct currently, and hopefully for much longer. But whatever I do it from my heart, and I do it from my heart because we talked earlier about the fact that people can't imagine, they're shocked to know that I know what a hand cycle is and you go skiing, or
Yeah.
that we want to go to work. But I say to those people, just imagine either not being able to see or not being able to run down the road. Just imagine that for a second, and then decide whether, if those things were taken away, does that mean that your desire for life is removed?
Mm.
I think that logic doesn't follow. And if people just sit and for a second think what it might be like to be not them for 1 minute, I think we realize that we have to, as an organization, provide that. Our organization is seeped in it. It means
Yeah.
that people are genuinely concerned about each other's well-being. They actively ask, they'll ask again, are you okay? No, but are you okay?
Mm.
I think taking a moment out takes an inclusive, by design approach. Retrofit never served anyone. It costs 40 to 60% more to retrofit an organization. How much more does it cost to retrofit culture? Because
Yeah.
I would suggest it sometimes means bottoming out that culture, getting rid of the major players and bringing in new blood. If
Mm.
you want a new culture in your organization, you better do something differently. And
Yeah.
that involves bringing in a range of people that will represent the people you're serving. And I know I've got on a soapbox a bit, but it's good because we've got an hour, but we've got really not a lot more apart from I'd love to any questions you've got for me, and then finally, which you must spend time doing, And I don't care if if it's like the BAFTAs and you list 28,000 people that people must which I think if it ever happens to me and I get some gargantuan award, I will just list everybody in my life that I've ever been thankful for, just to see how long they'll let me stand there. But yeah. But we've only got on the hour, a bit like Cinderella. But yeah, number one, how do people get you? Go and find you. Find what you do. Fall in love with what you fall in love with. Apart from washing cricket whites, I will never forget my mother's. The entire first cricket team whites pink. That was courtesy of her washing machine and one of Gary's red football socks. So yeah, apart from washing cricket whites pink, what do you think people should get into, go and look at, and where can they go, and how do they find you if they want to do this wild ride of interviewing you?
Yeah, thanks, MJ. And dyeing your brother's cricket whites pink is a good way of getting out of never being asked to do it again, I'm sure. But yeah, no, I and thanks for this opportunity. It's been great. I'd say that, spoken about croquet. If you're interested in learning more about that, we've got the Croquet England website, and I would visit there. And I think our club members and just about how we make that whole sport more accessible is really exciting. And if you're interested in learning more about that or supporting what we do, absolutely come and visit the Croquet England website. Yourself, MJ, with accessibility partners, for those people, and I come across them quite regularly, who may be struggling with their access to work, or organisations that just want to know more about how to do this stuff better, or support to do it better, then to reach out to you guys and accessibility partners to be able to do that, whether individuals or organisations. I think that's really key. And for me, sort of on a sort of personal basis, as doing some things with yourself, looking at trying to help organisations specifically around sport inclusion, whether it's program design, whether it's organisational development. For me, it's probably best through my LinkedIn page, and feel free to send a direct message, and I'll very much sort of get back to people about it. So they're the sort of three things really at the minute that I would highlight. And very excited to keep doing what I'm doing. We're very much trying to get more people active, having a great time, benefiting from sport, and making things as inclusive as possible.
I think you should be at NADEX. So I think next year you should take the hallway croquet to the inclusion action space in NADEX or NADEX, whichever people call it, because I think, again, I was introduced to the most wonderful gentleman from disabled fencing. I'd never thought about sitting around with a mask on, poking people with swords. But it sounds really exciting to me. And it's only because we've been involved with with the fencing organisation and the marvelous human that is leading that. I even knew about accessible gymnastics because they're also involved in that. So I think the more we can showcase these things, so I think I'm going to say to the CEO of Croquet England, I think you should be at NADEX next year.
Sounds good. It sounds good.
If people, I think it's hard to go up to things if you don't have them, and why would you go and buy a set if you've never tried it? And if you try it around disabled people, I think it's easier than trying it around those I'm going to call them the normals. I've not met one yet, but I'm sure it's easier to do it around ourselves than around that lot. So and I'm not sure there are any in croquet. I've not met them yet, but I would love to experience it, and I think if we can find the most successful places to do that, or have open days where people can just come and try, then I think that's great. So Croquet England, I'll go and look at that website now. I'm going to hold my hand on my heart and say I haven't yet, which is shocking, really, of me. I'm going to admit that right now. for my tardy attempt at looking at that sport, because I haven't yet. Been a bit busy, really.
That's indeed. Well, you can tell me what you think. That's no problem.
Yeah, I will. And I can't wait to see what opportunities there are to connect. And for those of you that do are looking for somebody to come in and really look at your organisational infrastructure and whether it is reflecting society, as we say, because at the bottom of this is the business case for making more money and therefore being able to provide more help. If you are a sport that's looking towards inclusion, then I can honestly say that Andy is fantastic to work with. I've worked with him and spoken with him in larger organisations, and we've also sat around a table and made plans. And he's definitely somebody that I would call on to consult, because not only because of his lived experience, but because of his heartfelt wish to create inclusion. And I look forward to the legacy that we both leave.
Absolutely.
And to those of you that have been here today, fantastic. For those of you watching it later, it's great that you're here on the podcast and the video cast. Please do make your comments in all of those channels, because if we don't get people talking about this, then we can't get change. And I think that we can both conclude that Andy and I have decided that that's definitely what we're going to do with the rest of our days, as well as feeding me curry. Yeah, don't forget.
Absolutely.
Definitely with some meat in it. I don't want a vegetarian curry, I'm afraid, and it's definitely got to be. You can see why nobody ever invites me for dinner, can't you? Really, I can't get in, and then they don't know what to cook. They don't want to cook what I'm telling them to, because they're meant to invite me for dinner. I'm just going to say thank you to Joe Wilson for that lovely comment to say that it was a wonderful and thought-provoking conversation. I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't be more honoured that you've been here with me, Andy, for this whole hour on your very precious Friday night. I'm going to let you go and cook for your children and your family now. I'm going to imagine you doing breakfast, lunches, and dinners all weekend, and I'll just be waiting for the invitation. So for those of you who want to get in touch with Andy on LinkedIn. We're here again in a month at First Friday Live at 5. You can't really forget that. I sometimes do, but then I remember what it's called, and then I remember what day I'm meant to be doing it. So it's great to have you. There will be great people after you, great people before you, and do look out for the podcast and share it with your friends. And again, if people want to interview Andy, I should get in there now, because his diary will be packed very shortly. So have an absolutely wonderful weekend. It's great to talk to you. I'm going to end the live stream now.
Lovely. Thanks, MJ.
Goodbye to everyone. Bye.
Bye.